January 2025. A Chicago-sized iceberg breaks away from Antarctica's George VI ice shelf. Scientists dispatch a remote submarine to explore what's been hidden beneath. What they find shouldn't exist. 230 meters down, in water that hasn't seen sunlight for centuries, cameras reveal a thriving ecosystem. Giant sponges, unknown coral species, creatures that have been growing in absolute darkness for potentially thousands of years. Dr. Patricia Esquete, watching the footage, can barely contain her shock. We didn't expect to find such a beautiful, thriving ecosystem. But here's what she didn't say publicly. Some of these organisms are so alien to known science that researchers are questioning whether they evolved on Earth at all. Welcome to the Rabbit Hole Chronicles. I'm Percival Blackwood. Antarctica, the one place on Earth Google can't fully map, where military satellites mysteriously malfunction, where world governments signed a treaty ensuring no single nation can claim it, yet every major power maintains a presence. A continent larger than Europe, covered in ice 2 miles thick in places, hiding secrets that make scientists question everything they thought they knew about life on Earth. Right now, as you're listening to this, there are things living under Antarctic ice that shouldn't be possible. Microbes sealed away for 14 million years, still alive. Lakes of liquid water beneath miles of frozen surface, teeming with organisms that exist nowhere else on the planet. And then there are the other discoveries, the ones that get scrubbed from official reports. The pyramid-shaped mountain so perfect that geologists can't explain it. The magnetic anomaly under the ice that's stronger than anything naturally occurring should be. The reason why, in 1947, the US Navy sent 4,700 men, 13 ships, and 33 aircraft to Antarctica in a mission they claimed was for training, then left early after losing multiple aircraft in what Admiral Richard Byrd cryptically described as encounters with a new enemy that could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds. Over 200 million people have viewed Antarctica content on TikTok in the past year. Google searches for Antarctica discoveries number in the millions monthly. Everyone senses something's off about the official story. Today, we're going to find out why. Let me start with what scientists just discovered, because the truth is wilder than any conspiracy. Lake Enigma. East Antarctica. For decades, researchers assumed it was frozen solid, just another block of ice in the endless white. Air temperatures average -14 Celsius, dropping to -40 in winter. Nothing should be liquid here. But in 2019, an Italian team brought ground-penetrating radar and found something impossible. 11 meters below the permanent ice cap, a massive body of liquid water. Not a puddle, not a pocket. An entire lake, at least 12 meters deep, that shouldn't exist according to physics as we understand it. When they drilled through and pulled up samples in 2024, what they found rewrote biology textbooks. The water was alive, not just with a few hardy microbes, but teeming with bacteria, including ultra-small organisms called Pattecibacteria, with genomes so tiny they barely qualify as life. These weren't contamination from the surface. Genetic analysis showed these microbes have been isolated for potentially millions of years. Think about that. While human civilization rose and fell, while ice ages came and went, while continents drifted, these organisms survived in a liquid lake that shouldn't exist, under ice that never melts, in temperatures that should kill everything. Scientists are calling them legacy biota, remnants of an ecosystem from before Antarctica froze. They're literally studying alien life, just not the kind conspiracy theorists expected. But Lake Enigma is just the beginning. There are over 400 subglacial lakes beneath Antarctica's ice sheet. Lake Vostok, the largest, sits under 4 kilometers of ice and hasn't seen sunlight for 15 million years. When Russians finally drilled into it in 2012, they found, well, that's where things get classified. The official report mentions microbes. The unofficial reports, leaked by team members who've since gone silent, describe organisms that don't match any known branch of life. Dr. Sergei Bulat, the chief microbiologist on the Vostok project, initially announced they'd found a bacterium that shared less than 86% of its genetic sequence with any known organism, essentially declaring they'd discovered a new form of life. Within days, he retracted the statement. No explanation. The samples were sealed and sent to undisclosed facilities. Bulat hasn't given a public interview since. Here's what we know for certain. Life exists in places we thought impossible, in conditions that should be lethal, evolving in isolation for millions of years. And every time we drill deeper, we find more. Which brings us to that iceberg that calved in January 2025. When ice shelves collapse, they sometimes reveal what's been hidden beneath for millennia. This time, scientists got lucky, or unlucky, depending on your perspective. The remote submarine footage shows sponges the size of cars, coral species that glow with their own light, despite never experiencing photosynthesis. Organisms that have no business existing in perpetual darkness, yet there they are, thriving. Marine biologist Dr. Patricia Esquete called it beautiful. Her colleagues, speaking off record, used different words. Impossibly complex and evolutionarily paradoxical. How do you evolve bioluminescence in a place that's never seen light? Why develop eyes in eternal darkness? Unless, of course, it hasn't always been dark. Or unless these organisms didn't evolve here at all. NASA is particularly interested in Antarctica's hidden ecosystems. Not for Earth science, but for astrobiology. They're using these discoveries as models for potential life on Europa and Enceladus, ice moons that might harbour subsurface oceans. The official line is that Antarctica helps us understand how life might survive elsewhere. The unofficial speculation among researchers is more unsettling. What if Antarctica is showing us life that came from elsewhere? Consider the meteorites. Antarctica is the best place on Earth to find them. Dark rocks stand out on white ice, and the cold preserves them perfectly. We've collected over 45,000 meteorites from Antarctica, including several from Mars. But here's what they don't advertise. Some of these rocks contain organic compounds, complex amino acids, the building blocks of life, and they're finding them in the same areas where these impossible organisms thrive. Is it coincidence, or is Antarctica a landing pad for organic material from space, seeding the continent with life forms that evolved under different rules? Now let's talk about the mountain that broke the internet. 2016. Someone scanning Google Earth spots it in the Ellsworth Mountains. A perfect pyramid. 4 triangular faces meeting at a precise apex, each face almost identical in size and angle. It looks exactly like the Great Pyramid of Giza, except it's in the most remote place on Earth and made of solid rock. The photos went viral immediately. Antarctica Pyramid, millions of views. And the explanations from geologists? Embarrassingly weak. They called it a nunatak, a peak poking through ice that happened to be pyramid-shaped through natural erosion. Dr. Eric Rigneau, a respected glaciologist, said pyramid shapes are not impossible in nature. Not impossible. That's the best they could do. Environmental scientist Maury Pelto explained it was shaped by freeze-thaw erosion over millions of years, comparing it to the Matterhorn. Except the Matterhorn doesn't look like someone built it with a protractor and straight edge. This Antarctic pyramid has geometric precision that makes engineers uncomfortable. The peak is 4,150 feet tall. Its faces align almost perfectly with cardinal directions. And it's not alone. There are actually several pyramid-shaped mountains in Antarctica, though none as perfect as this one. The British Antarctic Survey admits they've informally named multiple peaks Pyramid because of their shape. Multiple pyramids in Antarctica. The debunkers work overtime on this one. Just a mountain, they insist. Natural geological processes. But when pressed for other examples of mountains this geometrically perfect, they go quiet. When asked why so many pyramid-shaped peaks appear in Antarctica specifically, they mumble about unique glacial conditions. When someone points out that the Piri Reis map from 1513 appears to show Antarctica's coastline as it would look without ice, something we've only confirmed with modern radar, they change the subject. Here's what nobody wants to discuss. Antarctica wasn't always frozen. Go back 50 million years, and it was covered in rainforest. Fossils prove it. Palm trees grew there. Dinosaurs roamed there. The continent has been habitable for far longer than it's been frozen. If an advanced civilization wanted to build something that would last millions of years, encoding knowledge in stone geometry, Antarctica, before the ice, would have been perfect. Remote enough to avoid interference, stable enough to preserve monuments, significant enough geologically to ensure future discovery. But let's assume the skeptics are right. Let's say it's just a mountain. That still leaves us with other anomalies that have no natural explanation, like the magnetic anomaly detected in 2018 beneath the ice of East Antarctica. It's an area roughly the size of Maryland where magnetic readings spike to levels that shouldn't occur naturally. The scientific explanation: a massive meteorite impact crater filled with magnetic minerals, except the signal is too strong, too organised, too artificial. Or consider the 2020 discovery. YouTube user Mr. MBB 333 spots something on Google Earth that looks like a 400-foot ice ship off Antarctica's coast. The debunkers rush to call it a weird iceberg. But icebergs don't have symmetrical hull shapes. They don't have what appears to be a superstructure. And they definitely don't appear in the exact coordinates that match a classified US Navy document from 1947, describing the location of an anomalous vessel encountered during Operation Highjump. Operation Highjump, we need to talk about what really happened there. 1946 to 47. The United States sends a full naval task force to Antarctica. Officially, it's for training and research. Admiral Richard Byrd leads 4,700 men, 13 ships, 33 aircraft. It's the largest Antarctic expedition ever mounted. They're scheduled to stay 8 months. They leave after 2. The official report mentions difficult conditions and unexpected losses. Multiple aircraft crashed, personnel killed. But Byrd's private remarks, leaked years later, tell a different story. He allegedly told a reporter that Antarctica was defended by craft that could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds. He warned that the United States should prepare for the possibility of attack by aircraft operating from polar regions. The Navy classified most high jump records for decades. When finally released, entire sections were redacted. Photos were missing, flight logs were incomplete, and several participants, interviewed years later, described seeing disc-shaped aircraft that outmaneuvered their planes, beams of light that disabled engines, and areas of open water where ice should have been miles thick, with structures visible beneath. But high jump was just the beginning. Every major power has maintained unusual interest in Antarctica. The Nazis sent an expedition in 1938 to 39, claiming a region they called Neuschwabenland. The official story says they were scouting whaling grounds. But the expedition included scientists, engineers and equipment that made no sense for whaling reconnaissance. They took thousands of aerial photographs, many never released. And when the war ended, several U-boats supposedly carrying high-ranking Nazis disappeared heading south. U-977 and U-530 surfaced in Argentina months after Germany's surrender, their crews refusing to explain where they'd been. The conspiracy narrative writes itself. The Nazis discovered something in Antarctica, maybe ancient technology, maybe natural resources, maybe something else. They established a base, and when the war ended, key personnel escaped there. Operation Highjump was an attempt to root them out, but the Americans encountered something unexpected. Either advanced Nazi technology developed in secret, or whatever the Nazis had found that made Antarctica worth defending. I know how this sounds, but consider the context. This was the same era when the US government was dosing citizens with LSD, overthrowing foreign governments, and building nuclear weapons. Is an Antarctic Nazi base really more outlandish than MK Ultra or Operation Paperclip? The official historians say no evidence exists for a Nazi Antarctic base. Colin Summerhays from Cambridge reviewed German naval archives and found no mention of plans to establish one. But absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, especially when dealing with classified Nazi projects. We didn't know about their nuclear program until we captured it. We didn't know about their jet fighters until they started shooting down our bombers. What else didn't make it into the official archives? Even if we dismiss the Nazi connection, something strange happened after World War II. In 1959, 12 nations signed the Antarctic Treaty, the only successful arms control agreement of the Cold War. At the height of mutual nuclear paranoia, the US and Soviet Union agreed to keep Antarctica demilitarized. They've honoured that treaty ever since, even when violating every other agreement. Why? What's so special about Antarctica that sworn enemies would cooperate to keep it neutral? The official answer is scientific preservation. But these were nations that tested nuclear weapons in populated areas. They didn't care about preserving Arctic ecosystems when drilling for oil. Yet Antarctica remains off-limits, protected by international agreement that everyone mysteriously honours. Today, every major nation maintains research stations in Antarctica. Publicly, they study climate, ice cores, and penguins. But the personnel rosters are interesting. Along with glaciologists and biologists, you'll find experts in fields that seem unrelated to ice research: quantum physicists, archaeologists, linguists, cryptographers. Either penguin behaviour is far more complex than we thought, or something else is being studied down there. The Chinese are particularly active, establishing multiple bases in areas with no obvious scientific value. The Russians never stopped drilling at Lake Vostok despite international pressure. The Americans maintain a no-fly zone over certain regions, citing safety concerns that they won't elaborate on. And private visitors to Antarctica report GPS malfunctions, compass anomalies, and areas where electronic equipment simply stops working. Then there are the whistleblowers. Every few years, someone claims to have worked at Antarctic facilities and witnessed something extraordinary. Brian, allegedly a Navy flight engineer, described flying supplies to a base that doesn't appear on any map, built into a mountain with entrances large enough for aircraft. Linda, who claims she was a contractor at McMurdo Station, talks about restricted areas where only personnel with cosmic clearance could enter. These stories are impossible to verify. The people use pseudonyms, their credentials can't be checked, their claims sound like science fiction. But here's what bugs me. Their stories are too consistent. Different whistleblowers years apart describe the same things: massive underground facilities, ancient artifacts found in ice, phenomena that physics can't explain. Either there's a coordinated disinformation campaign to make us believe fantasy, or multiple people are independently reporting similar experiences. The ancient map evidence is particularly unsettling. The Peary race map from 1513, supposedly compiled from older sources, shows Antarctica's coastline. Except Antarctica wasn't discovered until 1820. The Orontius Phineus map from 1532 shows Antarctica in detail, including mountain ranges we've only confirmed with modern sonar. The Bush map from 1737 depicts Antarctica completely ice-free, showing geography that matches what we now know exists under the ice. Mainstream historians explain these as lucky guesses or misinterpretations. But how do you guess the location of mountain ranges under 2 miles of ice? How do you accidentally draw coastlines that match radar surveys conducted 400 years later? Unless, of course, these maps were copied from much older sources. Sources from when Antarctica was ice-free. Sources from someone who mapped it before it froze. Which brings us back to those ecosystems thriving in impossible places. Life that shouldn't exist, in conditions that should be lethal, following evolutionary paths that make no sense. Every new discovery in Antarctica challenges what we think we know, and every attempt to explain these discoveries sounds increasingly desperate. Maybe it's all coincidence. Maybe Pyramid Mountains are natural. Maybe Nazis didn't escape to Antarctica. Maybe those maps are lucky guesses. Maybe the magnetic anomalies have mundane explanations. Maybe the hidden ecosystems evolved normally. Maybe Operation Highjump encountered bad weather, not Foo Fighters. Maybe the Antarctic Treaty is just about science. Maybe all those whistleblowers are lying. That's a lot of maybes. Or maybe Antarctica is exactly what it appears to be. The most important and mysterious place on Earth. A continent that holds keys to our past and possibly our future. A place where life defies understanding, where geometry defies nature, where history defies explanation. What I know for certain is this. Antarctica is changing. The ice is melting, revealing secrets frozen for millions of years. New technology is allowing us to peer deeper beneath the surface. And what we're finding challenges everything. Our understanding of life, our model of history, our place in the universe. The scientists studying Lake Enigma's impossible microbes are asking if life on Earth might have originated elsewhere. The researchers mapping under-ice geography are finding features that shouldn't exist. The historians examining ancient maps are questioning whether advanced civilizations predated known history. These aren't conspiracy theorists. These are credentialed experts, published in peer-reviewed journals, working for respected institutions. And they're all reaching the same uncomfortable conclusion. We've been wrong about Antarctica. As I record this, multiple nations are racing to establish new Antarctic bases. China just announced plans for another station. Russia is expanding operations. The US is upgrading facilities with capabilities that seem excessive for climate research. They're not just studying Antarctica anymore. They're preparing for something. What do they know that we don't? What have they found under the ice that justifies this investment? And why, despite all the international tension elsewhere, do they continue to cooperate in Antarctica? The public is starting to notice. Those 200 million TikTok views aren't just entertainment seekers. They're people who sense the official story doesn't add up. Who wonder why we can map Mars but not Antarctica? Who question why the most inhospitable place on Earth attracts so much government interest? The truth about Antarctica, whatever it is, won't stay hidden much longer. The ice is melting. Technology is advancing. Information is leaking. And what emerges might force us to rewrite not just history books, but our understanding of life itself. Next week on the Rabbit Hole Chronicles, we're examining the Georgia Guidestones, America's Stonehenge. Erected in 1980 by persons unknown, inscribed with instructions for rebuilding civilization after an apocalypse, then mysteriously blown up in 2022. Who built them? What did they know? And why did someone want them destroyed? Until then, I'm Percival Blackwood, reminding you that the most dangerous conspiracies are the ones that turn out to be true. And Antarctica? Antarctica might be the biggest truth we're not ready for. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and maybe stay away from Antarctica.